The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
ShapeShift, a global trading and crypto management platform over the past 7 years, is decentralizing. CEO Erik Voorhees tweeting Wednesday, and we have that tweet. Starting today, we begin open sourcing the ShapeShift project, dissolving our corporate structure towards zero and reorganizing around a borderless, decentralized community governed by the holders of the Fox token. Joining us now to discuss is ShapeShift CEO Erik Voorhees in Denver. Welcome to the show, Derek. Erik, so would love to hear what led to this decision, and it's an epic tweet thread, so what's going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think those who have been watching us for the last 6 months are not very surprised by this. But ultimately, we are transforming from a traditional equity-based, VC-backed corporate entity to a decentralized autonomous organization. This is something that I didn't understand really at all even a year ago. So this is relatively new, but the tools have gotten better and better for this kind of thing. And just from the competitive landscape perspective, the most interesting projects in the whole crypto industry are those which are open source, are those which are composable, which are global, and to the degree that it can become immutable, that's what we're after. So ShapeShift is starting that transformation yesterday with that announcement.
So Erik, are you going to have a job? I mean, it's not like you need the money or anything, but what are you going to be doing? What are you going to be doing day to day? Are you still going to be involved?
Yeah, of course I'll still be involved. There won't be a W-2 paycheck. There won't be an expectation of a 9-to-5 role. There won't be payroll taxes. Those are all like the least important parts of a job. The most important parts of a job are doing fulfilling work and earning income for that fulfilling work. And with this structure, it doesn't mean that people that work on the project won't get paid. They just won't be W-2 employees. And that actually frees up the organization to be far more dynamic.
So how much percentage-wise are you going to control after this is all done? I mean, how much Fox tokens do you own now?
Yeah, I'll actually control less of the whole organization than I do today. So I own about a third of ShapeShift today, and I will end up owning around 5% of all the Fox tokens. So that puts me at the plurality, but still 5% is far from a controlling state. So I'll be an influential member of this project, but I will not be the CEO. And certainly I can be outvoted or outcontrolled by other holders of these tokens.
So is there any precedent for this kind of thing? Is there any precedent for this kind of thing? This is definitely like the decentralized ideal of the crypto industry, but is anyone actually doing this before now?
To my knowledge, no established company has ever decentralized itself like this. There are a number of crypto companies that have sort of a dual mode where they run a open source protocol, but they are still a centralized company. So like Uniswap, for example, has the open source decentralized Uniswap protocol, but they're also a traditional company with an office in Brooklyn. And that is, as far as I know, kind of their plan to run both of those things. We are simply transforming entirely from a centralized organization to a decentralized one. And this will take, 4 to 12 months, but it's a process that we're starting now. And yeah, we're gonna try to blaze a trail here. I think if we can do this well, other companies will see that this is actually a great path for them, especially if they're trying to build a global platform and they want it to be open and immutable.
Well, the truth is, though, right now, as you sort of just said, the industry is dominated by players that have a completely different model. Like if you look at Coinbase, which is one of the most influential players in the crypto world, this is very much a traditional company with a very top-down, corporate structure. I mean, is this kind of not good for the crypto industry as a whole? I mean, it does, some would argue that this is not in the spirit of decentralization, these kind of very centralized exchanges.
I'm a fan of diversity. I think it's a really good, it's really healthy for the industry to have multiple models. I love Coinbase. They're a fantastic company. They've been the most important company in the entire industry. they provide a certain service, and they've done a great job helping people get onboarded into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but they're custodial. And ultimately, if you're custodial, you're never really bringing the most important attributes of cryptocurrency to your users. So ShapeShift has always been non-custodial, and when you're non-custodial, it begs the question, like, what else can you decentralize? If the key management does not need to be centrally controlled, how much of the company can you actually decentralize entirely? And so that's what we're exploring.
So Erik, you mentioned Uniswap as an inspiration, but there are some people who are upset with some of the larger holders of Uni allocating tokens out of the treasury. What are you guys going to do different, or what kind of steps are you guys going to take to keep, let's say, a handful of owners controlling so much of the project that it effectively acts like it's centralized?
Yeah, good question. So this is something that we just need to develop with time. And that started with this massive airdrop that we did yesterday. So, we airdropped over 300 million tokens, over a third of the whole supply, out to the community, over 1 million ShapeShift customers and DeFi community members. So that's a start. Me going from a 30% owner of ShapeShift to a 5% controller of the Fox tokens is another important thing. And I think the next largest holder is something like 1 or 2% of those tokens. So we're trying to decentralize as effectively as we can. We have the advantage of being, purely centralized today. So every day that goes by that we become more decentralized, I would say, is an improvement on the status quo and an improvement on what we were.
And I'm curious, what happens to your investors who invested in ShapeShift? Do they get a proportional control of the Fox tokens? And well, first of all, let's go with that question first.
Yeah, so part of the challenge here is, like, we have to treat all the stakeholders of ShapeShift really well. We have to treat our shareholders well. We have to treat our employees well. We have to treat our customers well. And so it's been very important to us to be careful about how we do that. All of our shareholders received a healthy supply of Fox tokens themselves, and ShapeShift has a healthy balance sheet, and they will be getting those assets pro rata as we liquidate the company over time. So from their perspective, this is a great deal because they get a return on their investment and they still get upside into the future. And anyone who invested in ShapeShift is here for the revolution. They're here to try something new. They're here to push the boundaries. They're here to be pioneers. And the investors that have talked to me about this love it. The vast majority of our employees love it. And certainly if you saw the community response yesterday, they were thrilled.
Yeah, and the follow-up to that is, like, what happens to the staff? How do they get paid under this new model? How do new hires happen?
Yes, so the staff will all end their normal W-2 employment in 3 waves throughout the rest of this year. So they're all aware of this and have been for a couple months. They've all received a healthy supply of Fox tokens as well. So, depending on where the price sits, they currently are ending up far better off financially than they were just getting a normal 9-to-5 paycheck. Now, they can do what they wish after they leave normal employment. Many of them will still stick around and be part of the ShapeShift project. Some of them will go on to do other things, and that's totally fine. But into that, we get the entire world of interested people that want to contribute to this open source project. So instead of just having 65 9-to-5 employees, we will have thousands of diverse people from around the world contributing 30 minutes, once a month, or full-time passionate work, just as they would if they were at the company.
And is that on a voluntary basis, or how do staff get paid?
Yeah, they received a bunch of Fox tokens. So really it makes them all kind of entrepreneurs, right? Like just like me, starting a company, I don't make $1 unless the whole thing is successful over the long term, and there's a lot of risk to that. The employees now get put in that kind of position as well. And for some of them, that won't be the right fit, and they'll want to go find a normal W-2 job somewhere else. That's totally fine. For a lot of them, they have entrepreneurial creative energy themselves, and even though it's a little scary and new, it's an opportunity that they can really seize. And I think it'll ultimately bring kind of the best talent to bear on ShapeShift who are here contributing for the right reasons.
So legally, Eric, you're dissolving the company. Now, have you talked to regulators? Have you talked to the IRS? Obviously, you've probably talked to a lawyer about it. What happens legally with you guys? What happens to your rights and any sort of intellectual property that you have? And as far as your employees, do they then file, even if they're Fox holders, do they then have to file for unemployment, go scrounging around for health insurance, et cetera? Like, how does it dissolve as if it's a company that's gone bankrupt?
Yeah, so great questions. These are all the things that we're navigating. So yeah, from a corporate perspective, this is essentially a liquidation of the ShapeShift balance sheet and an ending of the corporate entity. Now that will be done over months. You know, it actually could take over a year because we'll have to do our last tax filing in the last year that we're operating. And so there can be kind of a long tail of that. But yeah, the corporate entity is winding down. But the corporate entity is really the least interesting thing about building a project with other people. So, you know, I won't comment on our discussions with regulators. Obviously, we pay all of our taxes and have for 7 years at this point. That for-profit business will go away, and in its place is simply an open source crypto interface that the entire world can use. And my hope is that this becomes far more dynamic, far more flexible, and far more immutable. It's not tied to any jurisdiction anymore.
Erik, one of the reasons the decentralization model has been so hard is because of regulators. And probably, you know, if you look at the example of Binance, right, which has kind of tried, you know, relative to other centralized exchanges to do this crypto model where, like, you know, they don't really have a headquarters and they're not really based anywhere. And now we're sort of seeing a regulatory crackdown on Binance all over the world. Do you think you guys are sort of going to be able to, like, pull this off? Or, you know, I mean, because regulators tend to come after, you know, people who try to do this kind of thing, who try to avoid like traditional corporate structures?
I'll say that we will always follow the laws, and we are going to find those ways that we can act within the laws and provide the best service for our users that we can. So, you know, unlike Binance, we meaning me and everyone else involved in ShapeShift. So it's just individuals, and really that's all a company is, right? Like, people get caught up in the trappings of a centralized entity, but it's just people. So we're just people still working on a project, and anyone who wants to be involved can do so. You know, unlike Binance, we're not custodial, so we really can be decentralized. The Binance.com exchange cannot ever be decentralized, and I think that's why we've seen CZ be very interested in, you know, the move to Binance Smart Chain, and they're certainly pursuing their own means of decentralization. It is a challenge. It's like new ground, and I think a lot of people are going to try and explore that.
Erik, I'm wondering about what led to this decision, because in the past you're a serial entrepreneur. You've been involved with many ventures within the space, and you've come into conflict with the SEC, $50,000 in fines for a gambling site you had, and just a lot of inquiries and investigations. So does that contribute to the reason why you just want to do away with the traditional corporate system? Has the traditional system just not worked for you in that regard?
I will say that regulatory friction absolutely has a part in this decision. I am in this industry to build tools that help bring financial sovereignty to people. That's why I first cared about Bitcoin from the moment I saw it. That's why I build and work and care and am passionate about this entire industry. If this industry does not bring financial sovereignty to individuals, the whole thing is pointless. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to further that goal. Sometimes that means we have to be in the gray area, and I think that's okay. I mean, I wish there were more people willing to be brave and to push the boundaries and to fight for principle instead of just, you know, trying to get along and make some profit. But I'm going to do it, and hopefully that will help inspire others to do so as well.
And finally, Jackson Palmer, who was one of the co-founders of Dogecoin, came out with an epic tweet thread himself yesterday saying, after years of, I'm often asked if I will return to cryptocurrency or begin regularly sharing my thoughts. On the topic again, my answer is a wholehearted no. He also says, after years of studying it, I believe that cryptocurrency is an inherently right-wing, hyper-capitalistic technology built primarily to amplify the wealth of its proponents through a combination of tax avoidance, diminished regulatory oversight, and artificially enforced scarcity. He goes on to say that despite claims of decentralization, the cryptocurrency industry is controlled by a powerful cartel of wealthy figures who, with time, have evolved to incorporate many of the same institutions tied to the existing centralized financial system they supposedly set out to replace. I wonder your response to Jackson Palmer's
yeah, it's quite a visual. You definitely get the like evil robber baron with their hat and their monocle, stealing from the poor. I actually think a lot of what he said is correct. It is hyper-capitalistic. And thank goodness there is actually a system that is hyper-capitalistic. That is supposed to be what America was about. It was supposed to be a free market, capitalistic country. And it is devolving into socialism in front of our eyes. Thank goodness that cryptocurrency has come around and provided an alternative while forcing that alternative on no one. It's a purely voluntary market-based system, and I think the world is richer for it. So unlike fiat currency, unlike the banking establishment, unlike the huge regulatory state, this is all voluntary. So Jackson, was involved and created the Dogecoin, and then he left, and cool, that those are peaceful interactions. And I think as long as something is based on peace, it's valuable.
Do you think it can remain that way?
It can remain that way to the degree that self-custody is maintained. So if cryptocurrency ends up in a bunch of custodians only, it will lose the most important properties that it has brought. So that's why ShapeShift from its beginning has been a self-custody crypto platform. I don't have a problem with other platforms being custodial. I just hope that that does not become the only way that people interact with these things. And I think if anyone watches the DeFi movement, all that stuff is self-custody. And there are hundreds of thousands of people using decentralized finance, pure self-custody from the base layer. I think that's a great sign, and we're going to help contribute to that wherever we can.